With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight here in the Bourbon Life Studios is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing really great. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Matt. I'm excited about this show. It has been a long time coming, and too long in my book, man. So I'm super excited to be back and have these guests back with us again. It's just going to be a great show. Of course, before we jump into that, Matt, I do want to thank all our sponsors. We appreciate everything that they do for us, including the brand that we're going to be talking about tonight. They've been with us for quite a while as sponsors, so we're super appreciative of what they do for us, and really appreciate that partnership. But Matt, we got a lot to cover tonight, so I'll tell you what, let's just jump right into it. You want to tell everybody who we have with us on the show tonight?
Mark, it would be my pleasure. We have joining us tonight the former guests of episode number 12, if you can believe that, number 12. And we're, what episode are we on now, Mark?
154.
154. How about it? So we have the founder, Neil Giraldo, and also Ari Sussman, the whiskey maker from Three Chord. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah.
You believe they had us back? It's I can't believe it.
Took quite a few episodes, I might say. I thought we'd come back, maybe around 70, 154 is a long time. We've aged quite a bit. Thanks, fellas.
Oh, no, you look great,
guys.
though. Just as stunning as ever.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Oh, guys, we appreciate you guys being on the show. Now, Ari, I've run into you a couple times over the last about the last year or so, for sure, and had some good conversations with you. So that's really fun. It's always great to get to see you and hang out with you. But it's great to be able to have you back on the show as well. Neil, you as well. Appreciate you coming out, hanging out with us tonight again and talking everything Three Chord. We're really looking forward to this episode and catching our guests up. And, we talked about this a little bit off air. It was, episode 12. So we're talking 142 episodes ago. So I think it's going to be good for us to kind of go back and revisit and talk about the past, talk about everything that we kind of talked about before. But I think it'd be good to rehash those stories because they were great stories. And we've got quite a few more listeners now, thankfully. It's not just, Matt's mom and dad out there listening to us on the podcast.
True story.
Yeah. so I think it'd be great to do that. But before we jump in to the stories and the backgrounds and everything, Ari, you want to tell everybody we've got something poured up for this first round. Would you care just to share with everybody what we're going to be drinking here?
I would love to. For our first pour of the evening, we're going to be sharing the Three Chord Tennessee whiskey. It is a great everyday sipping whiskey. Can be enjoyed in cocktails. A little bit. It's a great everyday sipper. Aged minimum of 36 months.
Okay.
Distilled in Tennessee. 80-10-10 mash bill. And it's like I said, it's mellow because it's gone through the Lincoln County process. And it was designed to have just a little bit of bite. We wanted to have a little bit of grain forward, nice balance with the barrel. And cheers.
Yeah, cheers for sure. And this is coming in 85 proof, correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Nothing at 80 proof here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we'll talk about the numbers here in just a little bit because that's a great story. So we'll definitely talk about that because I noticed when I got this bottle again, I got the 85, so we got the odd number on there, which is great. Matt, what are you picking up on the nose on this one?
For as high a corn content as it has, I pick up a lot of the rye is coming across. There's a lot of like good graham cracker. There's almost like a sweetness, like a mint gum that I pick up too on the nose. Then those really great aromas, nice vanilla, good oak coming through. The sweetness of the corn is there, almost like that, like a biscuity type sweetness, like a sweet cornbread across on the nose, but really just a really enjoyable, nice, well-rounded nose.
Yeah, I get that. You know, Matt, you talked about gum. It's like that sweetness and that mintiness together kind of reminds me of like a Wrigley's mint, spearmint type of gum, maybe, or one of those types of gums where you get that mintiness, but you also get that sugary flavor as well. So on the nose, I kind of picked that up. But you talked about, I think you mentioned graham cracker, maybe. And if you didn't, I will mention it because that's something else that I'm also picking up on this one as well. But that sweetness really comes through 80% corn. I think you'd anticipate that. But yeah, you do get that the rye as well. And again, this was only 10% rye, so which isn't really that high, but I think you do get those qualities that are shining through on this. And Ari, you said this is a minimum of 36 years. Was that right?
Minimum of 36 months.
Yeah.
I mean, 36.
Easy, Tiger.
Ooh, yeah. I get a little oakiness on this one, guys. I don't know what it's from.
Nice oakiness, and then Lincoln County process smooths it out. And so,
yeah,
for speaking as when we did our taste tests, when we decided we wanted to create an everyday sipper, that we wanted to be super approachable. We looked at whiskeys and blends of whiskeys from all across the country, many of them. And this is the one that we settled on. And part of it has to do with that approachable, that graham cracker, biscuity. And generally, I think you don't get many of those characteristics from a 36 to 45-ish month spirit, unless it goes through a Lincoln County process, unless it has had some filtration, because it's filtered out or some of the compounds, which are really great later on, but in the younger whiskeys express themselves, I think, a little bit more off-putting. So it drinks really interestingly, I think, for a non 4-year-old product. This is like we've been really interested in whiskeys from Tennessee in general. This is like an elevated version of what people would have been drinking in the frontier, right? This is like a really great version of that.
Yeah. And coming in at 85 proof, I mean, on the nose, it's not overpowering by any means. You don't pick up any ethanol off of it. I mean, it's just a nice, and you mentioned approachable, Ari, and I remember when we talked before, almost 3 years ago now, that we the first thing we drank was your bourbon, your straight bourbon. And that one, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think it was that 81 proof?
Yeah, that was 81
proof. Correct. Yeah. But approachability was one of the key issues, one of the key factors, I think, for you guys as you worked on that. So obviously you're using that same mentality, that same idea, that same concept with this Tennessee whiskey, correct?
Very much so. So over the past couple of years, we've had a number of releases in sort of various levels of approachability, from this, I think, which is probably our most approachable product, all the way up to 15-year-old straight Kentucky products, which I think were a little bit more challenging. But we as a company are into hospitality. We want to make sure that we have a little something for everyone. We're not pigeonholing ourselves into one thing. We're really exploring a whole range of whiskey styles.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, we love it. So guys, let's talk about who you guys are. I mean, people know who you are, but I think it's always fun to go back and kind of share a little bit about your background and what brought you into the whiskey world. So Neil, everybody recognizes your name from the music industry, of course. And I do have to say congratulations on the recent induction for you and your wife into the music Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Very cool. Great group of people in there too. Dolly Parton, Duran, Judas Priest. That was a great class. So congratulations
nice
on that.
Folks. Yeah, a bunch of talent there, and not only on stage but also when you're on stage and you're looking down there in the first few rows, you're scanning around. It's not the normal people you see at a concert, besides Springsteen being there, Lenny Kravitz, he's smiling, it's just a bunch of people. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, I can't even begin to imagine. So let's talk about how it was that you went from that and decided to get into the whiskey industry, because it's a great story and I'd love for you to share it with our listeners.
Okay. Yeah, because we did that 36 years ago. Is that when we were on here?
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
I love that. First thing I do want to say, Matt's microphone sounds really good. Mark, you got to get some EQ on this thing, I think. I think we got to carve away some of that mid-range so we can get a little more brightness, a little more top out of that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is that an SM7? Is that a Shure SM7?
It's a Shure SM7B.
Yeah. It sounds like you got to take a little of the boom out of that somehow.
Oh, on my end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll have to, you know what? I could probably turn up a little bit of the treble here and see if that makes a difference.
I think we got to carve out a little bit. You got to carve a little of that low mid stuff happening. When Matt talks, it's you can hear a lot of sibilants. Say something, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, that's very kind of you to say. And
you want to see the brightness? Hear the top end. This is. Yeah. I'm just trying to help you out here, Mark. Critique you in a negative way.
I appreciate that. I put a post out on Facebook actually 2 weeks ago and said, hey, any sound engineers out there who can give me advice and help me figure out this little soundboard and my mics and how to get better sounds so my podcast sounds great, let me know. And I just heard a bunch of crickets.
Yes. Well, the SM7's a great mic. I mean, it's a great microphone, but it also kind of has a little of this on it. You got to open it up. You got to open some.
All right, I'm gonna work on that.
Sorry about that. That's just because
it's not every day that podcasters have.
I was going to say
Hall of Fame producers.
Absolutely. This is your post being answered in tenfold here, Mark.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing. I have pretty good ears, but eyes are terrible. I'm totally blind, so I'm not going to critique looks at all because I can't see you guys, even though I got glasses on. So we'll forget that. So, all right, back to the story. All right, so we're approaching 7 years now. We were talking about 6 years before. The company was basically born on May 16, 2016, and it started because alongside of writing songs, I also write screenplays and treatments for TV shows and things of that nature and books, right? And I was working on an idea, a documentary, hybrid documentary, to give some credit and notoriety to local musicians in the Ohio area where I grew up. And I wanted to do sort of a hybrid documentary and give back. And part of the idea was a friend of mine saw the post I made, and he says, I'd love to help you. Why don't we get a spirits company to give us some money, maybe $100,000 to get a trailer made so we can be able to finance the film? Because it wasn't a major, motion picture industry. It was going to be an indie, right? So I says, why don't we start our own company? He laughed. He thought I was kidding. I wasn't kidding. I says, let's start our own company. He goes, what do you want to do? I says, I want to make whiskey, and I want to make something that's really difficult. I want to challenge ourselves, because I challenge people in the music world. I'm not afraid to be brave. Let's take something a little more difficult than just a clear spirit like vodka, or not that there's anything wrong with that, but something with, some complexion and difference. So right away, we searched the country for a whiskey maker, blender, and we went to Florida and Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, and then we ended up in Michigan, which was kind of strange because we didn't think we'd find our superior master whiskey maker in Michigan. But then we stumbled into meeting Ari, and I tell the story because as soon as I met him, I shook his hand, we started talking. I knew right away his principles in whiskey making and blending correlated with the music making and how I make music. And I found that the synergy of how he was making whiskey was very close to how I make music. And the word disruptive is used in music. I like to consider myself a disruptor in a positive sense. And Ari's a disruptor in the whiskey making and blending category, because he's not afraid to try things. He'll talk about the Scottish and, the origins of blending whiskeys way back when and how they did it and things of this stuff. So anyway, it started with Ari came aboard, then the team just started building, and I don't know why, and I don't know how I was able to find so many great, talented, really whiskey spirits loving people. I call it the greatest band in the spirits industry. I have all of our team, every single one of our people. We all try everything. Everybody tastes, everybody gets a vote, everybody talks about it. And we started, like I said, it's going to be 17 years. 17 years, I'm getting like you. It's going to be 7 years in May.
We're having a rough time. We're struggling with our math tonight,
yeah,
aren't we? I mean,
days and years and stuff. We get all messed up. But yeah, so that's how we started, And we had a mission too. We said we were going to not just be a one spirit, one expression company. We wanted to try many, many different things. We've talked to not only whiskey. We get in trouble, Ari and myself, when we talk to other people in our company. I says, I want to do a grappa. Let's experiment. Let's do this. So they go, okay, stay in whiskey right now. Stay in whiskey. Don't go outside the lanes here. So, and we've done that. And the other thing I'm going to say too is, just like with food, if you smell food that smells good, it tastes good, you're not going to want to smell. So I know people like some cheese that don't always smell so good and taste good. When it comes to sipping whiskey, it's got to smell good. It's got to have a great nose. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just, it's a bottom line of our company. It's got to have a great nose. And I think we've done that with all of our expressions. So.
Yeah. And that's a great story. I love it. The way you guys met and everything worked out the way it has. Ari, what about you? Can you talk about your background? Matt's always excited to have you on the show because that means that the Michiganders outnumber everybody else. I should say the Ann Arbor is outnumber everybody, right? So Ann Arbor rights, excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have another Michigander and Ann Arborite on the pod. Yeah, we're taking over the whiskey industry from here.
There you go.
So I originally did not start as a whiskey maker. I thought I wanted to be a winemaker. I've loved wine for a long time. I ended up in France learning about how to make wine and spent a couple summers there apprenticing. And when I came back to the United States, I would work in bars and I'd look at all these single malt scotches and American bourbons. And I kept on thinking to myself, the world of wine seems to be a little bit more vibrant and robust and specialized than the world of whiskey. And I didn't, or particularly American whiskey, and I didn't know why at the time. I didn't realize that there were a very small number of companies producing a large number of brands with a small number of liquid inputs, and that it was kind of homogenous in a way. Whereas in winemaking, it seemed like there were lots of cool regional styles. There were lots of varietals involved and different whiskey making traditions. And it turns out, if you look back at American whiskey making tradition prior to Prohibition, prior to the massive consolidations, we did have regional styles of whiskey, which have gone away in some cases for 100, 150 years. We're seeing some of them start to creep back now. But very early on, became interested in the notion of whiskey blending, pre-Prohibition whiskey blending in particular, in that there were all of these whiskey making tools and heritage, which seemed to have been forgotten. And so I was very interested in learning more about that. And I had at the bars that I worked at, I had graduated cylinders and we'd make our own blends, and it was a lot of fun. Trying to, through blending, find new characteristics and balances in the different whiskeys. Fast forward, I learned that Michigan State University, not in Ann Arbor, up in East Lansing, was starting the first distilling program in the country. Really, it was a business incubator and a business accelerator and an academic program all in one. And I met the professor up there, the late, great Dr. Berglund. And he invited me to come and manage the distillery at Michigan State and learn from all of the brands that were coming in to have products prototyped and developed and processes developed, as well as to work with many of the students who are now seeded throughout the industry. Right. So it's pretty amazing to see where some of these, they used to be undergraduates and now they are running large stills all over the country. So that's my background. I've had the pleasure of working with multiple brands. And one day, Mr. Giraldo walks into my life with a bold idea that he wants to create a family of whiskeys. And that was the beginning of the conversation that we're still having to this day.
That's great. And by the way, just so you know, May 16th is the day before my birthday. So for every birthday now, I'm going to celebrate with Three Chord and celebrate your birthday with my birthday as well. Yeah. Artie, you've got the look of a winemaker. You've got the beard, you got the hat, you could definitely, you just say, hey, I'm a winemaker, and people would definitely believe that for sure. But you got a great story.
We'll talk about it maybe later or another time, but Three Chord does incorporate winemaking techniques into our whiskey making process, as well as traditional whiskey making techniques.
Okay, great. Well, guys, I tell you what, let's jump back over to the Tennessee whiskey. Matt, what do you pick up on this one in terms of the palate and the finish?
There's a nice sweetness right on the front. I pick up that corn. To me, it comes across kind of marshmallowy too, like a nice creaminess, sweetness, marshmallow type. And then it wastes no time getting right into that rye spice, that rye cracker, kind of the warm cinnamon. And then the finish, I really pick up the influence from the malt on the finish. It's got this roasty, warm, long finish that at 85 proof, I'm very surprised by how warm it is, how long it is, and how pleasant it is. I would didn't want to say I was expecting it to fall flat at all, but it definitely goes on for quite a bit and leaves a really good impression on the end.
Yeah. Matt, the funny thing was I was listening, like I said, to that episode before from 36 years ago. And the bourbon, because it was 81 proof, and you and I both were really surprised. And it was funny because I could hear it in our voices as we were talking about the fact that it drank like a much higher proof, that it had such a positive not a hard finish. It had such a long finish on it. And that it drank, we were talking about Basil Hayden at 80 proof. And how much sometimes it feels like it's almost watered down, but how much that bourbon at 81 proof was just such a solid performer. So no surprise that this Tennessee whiskey blended by I call him the mad scientist, Ari Sussman, because he does some wild things, man. I mean, just crazy the way that you're able to blend stuff. But Matt, I agree with you on the palate on this one. The sweetness comes through, but then that spice just kicks in, even at 10% rye. It's just, it's so nice. And it has that almost, to me, like you said, Matt, it's almost like those cinnamon candies, that sweetness that comes through and that blends with that cinnamon. And I really like that. And the finish does go on for quite a while. So really, really enjoy that. Ari, how'd Matt do?
That was very good. You nailed most of the characteristics.
What's good about that too, as well, is as Ari knows, the charcoal Tennessee whiskey approach that some of the Tennessee whiskeys have. I like our Cask 5 because that doesn't come out and power over you. It doesn't knock you over the head, so to speak, with it. Some Tennessee whiskeys that I've tried, or even when we're doing blending and we're trying different things like that, I'm not a big fan of that. Truthfully, I don't like that over charcoal kind of thing that kind of comes out, and I'm glad that we don't have that. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the charcoal mellowing sometimes doesn't make it as mellow as what they hope, I guess. It doesn't impact it like you said on this one, and I agree with that. Matt, what are your final thoughts on this Tennessee whiskey?
I love seeing that Tennessee whiskey as a category is becoming more popular nowadays. I think that the charcoal mellowing, the Nelson County process, has received kind of some negative press and negative connotation associated with it. But it's really great to see this resurgence coming across and a lot of people taking a lot of pride in it and really turning out some really great products. And this is certainly right within where that category is shining. You all hit it really well on this one. And again, this is a great way for people to start losing those stereotypes that sometimes follow Tennessee whiskey around.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of age-old advice, because I'm probably the oldest one here in the 4 squares that we have on our screen right here, which I know I'm the oldest one. So here's a little quotation you can use. Assumption, presumption, right, plus judgment equals X, right? What is it? Most of the time you assume something about something, somebody, you judge them. Unfortunately, it's a characteristic of being human. And 99% of the time, what are you, right or wrong? You're wrong, right?
Yep.
So when it comes to whiskey tasting, food eating, somebody gives you an idea about something, don't overassume something. Just try it. And if you like it, there it is. You don't have to judge it negatively, is what I'm saying, or positive, too positive. So that's the quotation of the night is don't overassume and don't judge until you try something.
I think those are great words of wisdom, and that's a great way to close out round one here, guys. So let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Neil Giraldo and Ari Sussman from Three Chord in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round two of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me still, my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, man?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. It's always great to be back with you here for another episode.
I'm glad you didn't leave me.
Heck no, I got the fireplace turned on. It's nice and toasty.
Oh, yeah. Nice and toasty out there. You're drinking some great whiskey tonight. We got great guests on the show. After 36 years, we have them back. It's so good to
That's right.
So good to be able to sit down with them again. So I'm looking forward to round two here. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. Ari, do you want to tell everybody what we have poured up for this second round?
Absolutely. We're excited about this. You have one of our single barrel selections, Amplify Rye Single Barrel. It's available at Total Wines, 4 different Total Wine locations, I believe, in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And this particular one is 4+ years. It's the 95.5, clocks in at about 117 proof. We love our single barrel program in general. We have, when we select lots of whiskey, so however many truckloads come in at any given time, we go through in a very small amount, end up in the single barrel program. And having the privilege of determining which barrels end up in the single barrel program it's one of the great joys of being a whiskey maker.
Oh, yeah.
These incredible barrels, and you keep notes on each one, and then you've got to go back and make sure you were choosing the right one. So we were happy about being able to sell rye whiskey in Kentucky.
Yeah, and we love it. We had the Amplify Rye when you guys were on the show last time, and Matt and I were both just huge fans of that, no question about it. So I have not sampled any of this that we're drinking tonight. So I wanted to wait, even though I had the bottles. So I wanted to wait so we could actually taste it online live with you guys. I think it just makes the show better. So we can do it that way. But yeah, this is that single barrel. This was a Total Wine pick. And like you said, Ari, there's 4 stores that have it here in Kentucky. From what I understand, it's here in Lexington. It's the Hamburger location. We've got a Lexington Green location, and there's 2 St. Matthews, and then also the Paddock shops over in Louisville. So those are available over there. But you've also got several others. We did get a bottle of the bourbon. We're not going to be tasting that tonight. But there's also a Finnish one, the Pinot de Charentes. Is that right? Yeah. And I think is there a Goodwood collaboration too? But that's not single barrel, right?
That's not single barrel. That's a very special release that
okay.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, and I think they have that at the Total Wine too. So I mean, there's tons of stuff. But let's talk about this Amplify Rye. Matt, you're the rye guy, man. So I'm going to throw it to you. Of course, I always throw it to you anyway. So what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
I appreciate it, as always. This one hits right in my wheelhouse for stuff that I love to get on a rye. First sniff on it was opening up real bright green herbs. There's some dill, there's mint. Then it led to nice familiar spiciness, the peppercorn, a little bit of some baking spice. And it's opening up to it's just got this really great creamy nose on it. I'm really surprised at just this really, really nice, like sweet cream, like custardy type nose that's playing around in it, and just a nice bouquet of some oak on there as well. And just all the things I really love in the nose of a rye.
Yeah, it's really a complex nose, and I really, really enjoy it. But Matt, like you said, you get those the mintiness, the herbalness as well. I get a lot of sweetness off of this, and it's kind of funny because this is a 95.5, right, Ari? And
Correct.
these are sourced. I mean, everybody knows it's sourced, but we'll just say yes, it is sourced. But this is Kentucky and Indiana sourced. Is that right?
This one is just Indiana because
this is just Indiana.
True single barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got you. So this is just this in Indiana. But a lot of times when you say 95.5, I think people just automatically assume it's going to blow them up. It's going to be super spicy on the nose. It's just going to be too much. But this, not the case at all with this. I mean, this is a very pleasant nose. It's got a very, like Matt, I mean, I can't say any better than what Matt already said.
Yeah, you can.
But I think, no, I can't, Matt. I'm going to admit defeat on that one. But that's why I love having you here, because your palate is so good. But it's great because this 95.5, it is approachable, and it's 117 proof. But when you nose this, it doesn't come across at all to me as 117 proof. Matt, what do you think?
No, certainly not. It does not come across that hot. There's no burn from any sort of ethanol or excess proof point on it as well. And I think even some of the really great characteristics of some lower proof rye comes across. There's almost like some tropical fruit notes that are coming through in it as well. So it's Mark, you hit it right on. It's really complex.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Very nice indeed. And those are available at the Total Wines here in Kentucky. So make sure you get them. And the pricing on this, I believe, it was like $55.99, I think. That's
try to be as approachable as possible.
Yeah.
We want people to enjoy good whiskey. We want a lot of people to enjoy good whiskey. And you spoke about the complexity and spice and sweetness and creaminess. And if you add a little bit of water to a dram like that, I think you'll find that even new layers of flavor will start to emerge.
Yeah, very nice. It's funny because I noticed that this one is actually coming in at a little over 117. So we're back, and it's a single barrel. So it like knew that it was going to be part of your collection because it came in at an odd number. So let's can you talk about that, the odd numbers on the proofs, because it was something we alluded to originally, the 81 on the bourbon from the last show, the 85 on the Tennessee whiskey. Can you talk about the Neil? I know that's kind of your thing on those odd numbers, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's my curse that I give the company. But yeah, from day one, I told Ari, I said, no matter what we do, we can't have even numbers. They scare me for some reason. I always love odd numbers. It just so happens that three chord bourbon, 3 chords in the truth. It's such a beautiful odd number. The power of 3. I mean, it is remarkable. Just think about it. Every day, the power of 3 is around you everywhere. So it's phenomenal. It's a pyramid. It's everything. Great, right? So no even numbers. But I want to go back just about a minute and a half. You just did exactly what my quotation was in the first segment. Most people assume that 95.5 it will be like, wrong again. So assume plus judgment equals X. X is usually 99% wrong. Not 98, but 99.
Ah.
Right? See how I fall into place here? Yeah, so odd numbers, fortunately, the genius of Ari, that if it was to fall on an even number, he knows how to back it into the odd number and still keep its character like we want to have. So that's very important. Yeah. And with the rye, just to give you a little backstory with the rye too, when we did our very first rye, like we do all our expressions, Ari and I we talk about stuff, and he said, well, what do you want to see out of a rye? What kind of notes are you looking for? Do you want it earthy, rustic, woody? Do you want some, notes of fruity notes? And I told him I do want a balance, because balance is important, but I do tend for the little fruitier note, but still holding some of that rustic. You don't want to kick the spice out, right? You want to have it to linger and maybe grow at different sips. Like he says, add some water, and then you grow another type of flavor to come out of there. So that's how we do all our expressions, basically. We talk them through, and then Ari does what he does. And
I do want to mention, early on with the rye in particular, we loved we were looking for ryes with cherry-like aromas, right? Red fruit. And I just want to speak briefly about our current single barrel program, or I should say our newest single barrel program. which is available all over the country, 38 states, I believe. Because we leaned heavily into the cherry idea. We have 3 types of single barrels that are out in the world right now. We have some 6-year-old double wood. So it's single barrel bourbons that we've selected from our stocks that we then finish with either additional staves, very like high-end French staves. We also have some 5-year-old bourbon that has been refinished in toasted barrels. It's a different single barrel program. It's out there in the world. And the third one that you made me think of is we took some 5-year-old bourbon, various distilleries, and finished it in cherry bounce barrels. Cherry bounce is
cherry bounce. That's right. That's right.
It's a great Michigan or northern style liqueur. Anywhere where cherries grow, cherry bounce is made. Cherry bounce is just cherries and whiskey and sugar, and you let it sit in a barrel. And so we managed to get our hands on quite a few cherry bounce barrels, and there are bourbon finished in cherry bounce barrels, 3 Chord bourbon finished in cherry bounce barrels all over the country right now that you should definitely check out.
I was going to say, yeah, that sounds like a winner for sure. So need to try to track some of that down. What do you think, Matt?
I actually picked up some cherry bounce when I was home in Ann Arbor for Christmas. Yeah. From a Tippins market pick.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks for sharing, Matt.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry.
Can you feel the love, guys? Can you feel the love?
I think you got a birthday in May. You just
That's right.
Say,
you just got to
I got
make
a birthday
it till May.
coming up. So, guys, let's talk about how this all started. Neil, I love the story. So, if you don't care, because you had an idea, but can you share with our listeners how it was that you came up with what you wanted to do with this?
Sure. So Ari had this big book, large, like Bible, spirit Bible, like this huge thing like this. And we went to a friend of his local bar in Ann Arbor. Great bartender, tremendous people there. And they laid out all these different bourbons. So the idea was we were all going to take a little sip. So we were all going to make notes. And there's probably about 5 people there, I think. I think it was like 5 or 6, 7, something like that. Not many. And Ari just says, take a sip, tell us what you think. And everybody had a vote, right? So, this is too sweet. This is too much of a hug. This was, not sweet enough. We go all the way through. So we go through all these things. And finally we get to the last one. And he's making notes and checking it out. And I go to the last one. They pour it. I take a sip of the last one. Now, you got to understand something. I've drank whiskey at a very young age. My grandfather, Neil Giraldo, had his own still in his basement of his house when he came from Bronte Catania, Sicilia to America. And he would make wine and grappa and whiskey and everything. And he used to give it to me when I was 5 and 6 years old. And it was absolutely terrible. My mother would just kind of go, she'd go crazy, So I never, this was just homemade whiskeys, right? So I am not the connoisseur. I do not have the palate to understand these things. So we go through all these things. We go through about 15 of these. We get to the last one. I take a sip of it. I look at Ari. I put it down. I go, that's the one. I want it to taste exactly like that. And that one was, Ari?
That one, it was a hard one to find. That was the Hirsch 16-year-old. Hasn't been made in many, many years.
Man.
So he just
love that.
He just went, oh my God. He said, why do you have to pour him that one for? But that one I knew right away. I said, that is exactly what I love to achieve. That's exactly what I was talking about.
So Ari, you had marching orders and quite a tall order all in the same breath there, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. And we said, we're going to create accessible whiskeys that lots of people are going to love. And we are going to punctuate that production with whiskeys that fit the same bill that you could put next to a Hirsch and a lineup. And thankfully, over the past 6-7 years, we've been able to release a number of spirits that I feel, some were small batches, some were limited edition standard expressions, that we're able to achieve pretty remarkable status and
correct.
Fantastic spirits. We've been able to put together some great products that I would be happy to put next to a Hirsch.
Yep, definitely. That, well, I'm not going to go into some of the products that I've had but there's several that I've had from you guys that have just been absolutely outstanding and absolutely loved them. But I think this is a good point. We can kind of talk about the process, Ari, because, you had this Neil saying, gosh, this 16-year-old Hirsch is delicious. I want it to taste like this. So in terms of blending and in terms of doing your batches, I mean, how does that work for you guys? I mean, do you have a set number of barrels? Does that vary from batch to batch? And are you looking for that same profile from batch to batch, or are you letting the barrels kind of dictate and just maybe change it up a little bit per batch?
A great question. So it's complex is the answer, because we have some standard expressions and we do a lot of product planning. This is the nerdy side of the logistics of making whiskey in a brand that's growing, which is you have a sort of house style. You're also purchasing spirits, sourcing spirits, visiting barrel warehouses, tasting through lots of barrels to determine what comes back to the blending house. So for that reason, we write batches on many of our spirits, because we understand that while there's a style that's consistent throughout, batch to batch, there's going to be some differences. We kind of embrace that. And those differences are what makes some batches incredibly special. And different batches are different to different people for different reasons. So there is a bit of variation. It's almost like a vintage in wine, where you can have a house style, but year to year it expresses itself differently. That's how we feel about batching, and that's how we feel about blending in general.
I think that's a great answer, and that makes a lot of sense to anybody that's a wine drinker and anybody that's a bourbon or whiskey drinker. That makes sense, because you have a target that you're shooting for, but yeah, there may be a little variation from year to year, like you said, like a vintage wine. Different vintages you're gonna have the same type of profile, but a little variance here or there.
I think it's something to be embraced. If I'm purchasing something like a Johnny Walker Black, I'm looking for a certain level of consistency no matter where in the world I am. Three Chord is very much about a journey. Three Chord is very much about experiencing different styles of whiskey. And we have our house style for sure, but batch to batch, there can be some variation, and it's always wild. And being able to taste batches sequentially it's pretty fun.
Yeah. And Neil, that's what you're looking for. Approachable, a great taste, but a little bit of variance from here to there. So that's something. Yeah.
It's like I said, it's about having a great team and everybody challenging each other. Ari's not afraid of anything at all. I mean, somebody tells you they want a whiskey that's like that Hirsch 16-year-old. I mean, come on. It's just to reach for, that you're trying to reach for greatness. It's like the master. You never be the master, but you got to always go for that. Now, I have to mention this because I critiqued your microphone, which I'm very familiar with an SM7 because I use it myself, but I have to EQ some of the stuff out of it. So I shouldn't be doing that, because you probably hear that, right? So I got this squeaky stool, piano stool. So I'll tell you I'm going to leave you on this little one here in this segment here, is that Scotty Moore, great guitar player, played with Elvis, studio guy, phenomenal, right? So he would do sessions and he'd have this chair. So he would play, and if he made a mistake, he'd go, you got the stool squeaked. I got to do it again. So he'd always blame it on the squeaky stool.
So, that's great.
Yeah, it's just great. If he screwed up, it's like, oh yeah, it's a stool, man. We got to do it again.
Well, I'm gonna work on the mic. I'm gonna try to figure that out. All right, this board I've got, it's pretty basic, but I'm gonna work on that before the next episode and get this straightened out. Matt, let's jump back to.
Sound great.
I appreciate it. It's just I've got such a deep voice. I can't, no EQ is going to change that, Neil.
No, it's going to be better. I'm telling you, you're going to see. You're going to love it.
All right. Matt, let's jump back to the single barrel Amplify rye from Total Wine. What are you picking up in terms of the palate and the finish on this?
Well, now that Neil left us with that, it's the stool. It's like what you've been doing. Oh, it's the co-host. Everything would have been great, but it was the co-host.
It's Matt's fault.
So you're going to have to come up with a new one. But, the Amplify rye. So right away, that spice is there. It lets you know that it's 95.5 right on the front of the palate. big, nice bouquet of peppercorn spice. That heat really hits right up front. Kind of like a lingering coating tingle, almost like the most like approachable prickliness on the mouth. Then it transitions to like I pick up some green apple and kind of some herbal notes coming down the line as well, and then a nice long warm finish that comes back to that peppercorn, a little bit of cinnamon, just done really well. Just a really, really great example of a beautiful 95.5.
Yeah, this is one, Matt, I could sip on this one probably, well, I don't want to say all night long, but this is one I can enjoy a couple of pours of easily. Man, it's just got all those right notes just from a rye standpoint. When we started this show, Matt, I was not much of a rye fan. Matt was, and I tell you, over the last 3 years that we've been doing this, I've just really turned around like a 180 completely on rye. And this one just it's spectacular, guy. I mean, this is a really, really nice single barrel that Total Wine picked out from you guys. Everything Matt said, I can't really top that. You get that nice spiciness, that punch of that rye. It's not too overwhelming, I don't think. It's not going to be a beginner's rye. You don't want to start with something like this. But again, if you're a rye fan, you're going to love the flavors you get. Matt, I get a little bit, you mentioned herbalness. It almost has a little bit of a green tea kind of flavor to it on the palate to me, which I enjoy as well. So I get that spiciness, the peppercorns you mentioned, the cinnamon, but there's a little bit of a linger on the finish, almost like a little bit of a green tea type of note to me, which I really enjoy in a rye whiskey. But all in all, it's a beautiful, beautiful rye, guys. So great job.
Well done. Thank you.
Matt, final thoughts on this one?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm right there with you. Well, guys, I tell you what, I think it's probably a good place. We'll take a break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll come back for the third and final round with Neil Giraldo and Ari Sussman in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me still live here in the Bourbon Life studios is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Hey, Mark. We are 2 rounds in, and I am doing great. How are you?
I'm 2 rounds in as well, and looking forward to 2 more rounds in this one round. So I'm feeling pretty good too. Probably for a different reason than you're feeling good, Matt, since you're still doing dry January.
We'll get through it.
Yeah, we will. Why don't you tell everybody who we have with us, Matt?
I would love to. We have Neil Giraldo, the founder, and Ari Sussman, the whiskey maker at Three Chord. Gentlemen, welcome back for the final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for sticking around, guys. We appreciate it. So now this round, Ari, is it cool? Can I hold up the bottle even though it's not officially labeled? I mean, it does have.
Please do.
Yeah. So this, the last time you guys were on the show 36 years ago, you sent us a sample of the Strange Collaboration. And I believe at that time, we were actually the first ones outside of your group. We were the first podcast or social media group to actually get to taste the Strange Collaboration that you guys had done. Yeah. So when I talked to Michael on Friday and he was like, "Hey, I got something I think I want to send you guys. I'll get Ari to send it out to you. I think it'd be great." He's like, "And you guys," he said, "I'm pretty sure you guys are the first ones that are going to get to try this." So again, another first for the Bourbon Life Podcast. Yeah, we appreciate that. So you want to tell everybody what it is that we've got poured up in this third round?
Absolutely. This has been a really fun project. Yeah. And it's we're getting towards the end of the production phase. So what you're getting is something that's not exactly what's going to go in the bottle, but it's pretty gosh darn close. And so what we decided to do was think about some of the characteristics that seem to be popular right now. Toasted barrels, honey barrels, characteristics that that we're seeing separately, but we wanted to bring it all together into something. And rather than load toasted and honey into just straight bourbon, we thought we would do something a little bit interesting. So it's a blend of 4 and 6 year old bourbon with some 7 and 8 year old Kentucky corn whiskey. We selected the corn whiskey very specifically. It brought a really nice smoothness and viscosity, and it's almost like a canvas to highlight some of the toasted and honey notes. We also wanted to make sure that our honey was not overly cloying in any kind of way. We love the characteristics of honey, the aroma of honey, but it can be taken too far and it can become cloying, and we wanted to avoid that entirely. Right. What we're doing right now is modulating the toasted level, and it drinks a little bit more like European spirits in that it has that bourbon backbone, but it has a finesse that comes from a mature, good corn whiskey as well.
Yeah. Matt, what do you pick up on this one? Because it's got the high rye, like a 36, is that right? 36% right. Rye, and then a 21% rye. So it's a blend of that plus that corn whiskey in there. So you're getting some high rye mash bill bourbons and a good portion of that corn whiskey in there. So what do you get, Matt? What do you pick up?
I first have to say that I love the addition of the corn whiskey in here, along with what I was saying earlier about seeing the Tennessee whiskey, that category starting to blow up. I think seeing corn whiskey coming across and being used in more things, more blends, more finishes, just utilized more in modern day production, I think is a really, really great thing that's happening within the bourbon industry or in the whiskey and distilled spirits industry. And it does a great job in this. It's certainly not overly sweet, like you were saying, Ari. It's not like just like licking a beehive, but it's got good like cereal grain that's coming across, like nice honey cereal grain. Kind of, I go back to that graham cracker, but then that high rye shines through, and there's a lot of like an herbal bouquet on this one, like nice thyme, lemongrass, like those really, really nice summer herbs. And just a nice warm toasty aroma as well, coming kind of near the back of the palate. Just really, really well rounded and certainly not overdone in any one direction.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. To me, when you said graham cracker, I was thinking already like a honey graham cracker. Like, when I was a kid and ate those honey grahams. I don't know if you ever ate those or not, but it's a very subtle, hint of honey. And again, Matt, this, like you said, you pick up that sweetness, and it actually took me a couple minutes to really, knowing that it was honey, I had to search for it. And, I could tell there was a sweetness to it, but that honey started coming through just a little bit. And again, it's not overpowering, but those, that rye, the spices, Matt, just like a ginger cookie, or a honey graham, something like that. But, very, very nice. And this one comes in, I believe this was 113. I think it's 113.5 or something like that.
It's 113.
We're back on the 113. We're back on the odd numbers. That's great. Of course. I love that. So Ari, what else about the nose? Anything else on there that we may have missed?
Well, I think you nailed it. We were inspired by Honey Nut Cheerios and breakfast cereals and flavors of our youth, and honey and toast go together so well. And again, it's very easy to be ham-handed with a lot of these whiskeys. It's easy to come in with a lot of wood and a lot of honey, but we wanted to sort of downplay it, just bring it down a notch, and that was the intention with this blend.
Yeah.
Very nice. There's something, because we talk about it all the time, Ari and myself, about music and whiskey making and the similarities between the two. So reverb, for instance, when you put reverb, which is artificial, or if it's a room, it's still artificial. So you're putting it on a vocal, you put it on a snare drum, whatever it is. What you do is you increase the volume of the reverb. It's loud. You keep doing it. It's loud. It's going, you're turning it down. You're turning it down. You're turning it on and off. And where you have it when it's supposed to be at its ultimate or penultimate position is when you barely hear it. Because if you put too much reverb on it, ends up soaking up the whole mix, and then you have too much reverb. It's really difficult. Not a lot of people get that, but expert mixers and people of that nature do that. And it's really important. You keep turning it down. Well, that's the same as, for instance, this honey expression that we have. Because I tell people, we have a honey barrel, we have a honey. They go, nah, I don't go for that. I says, no, but you don't understand. We're not going to it's not going to be like you're drinking honey. It's not.
Right.
You're only supposed to get the essence of what's happening there. It's just like reverb. It's exactly like when you put an artificial sound on a recording to embellish it, to give it space, right? But not over. You don't go over it, and that's important.
Yeah,
and that's what Ari does.
And that kind of goes. It goes to the brand itself, because the bottles, it says the perfectly tuned taste. So that's kind of what you're doing, right? I mean, you're perfectly tuning the taste of your whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially. Yeah. It's just a balancing thing. It's, you just don't want to, listen, unless that's what you're going for, unless you're trying to make a red hot and you want it to be cinnamon, like knock your head off with cinnamon. That's okay. But that's not what we're about. We're about sipping and we're trying to have expressions that tell us who our company is. And that's who we are.
Well, that makes sense. Matt, I'll tell you what.
Disruptors.
There you go. Yeah, the disruptors again. I like that.
Subtle disruptors.
Subtle disruptors. Matt, let's jump back, because we got something else we're going to be tasting on in this round again. So let's go ahead and move over to the palate and the finish on this one. What are you picking up on this?
I think the rye really comes through quite well on the palate, and certainly balances out any connotations that someone might have about honey barrel finish being just overly sweet. I think it definitely lets you know that there's bourbon in there. It's not just drinking dessert. You're not just drinking honey out of a barrel with a little bit of whiskey added to it. So I think it stands up to a lot of the characteristics of the blend. I really love the addition of that corn whiskey in there. Kind of adds like sort of that brightness, sort of a little bit of a kick and a pop to it as well, that I think helps to play and balance things around. A little bit of herbal notes to it as well. There's some of the cinnamon, a little peppercorn, but also more of those summertime herbs, and almost like some different wood notes, like something beside just oak, but like kind of a nice natural earthy type wood aroma. And then a nice long finish like we've had with everything. Just a good cerebral finish that really leaves you thinking. I think the honey comes through a little bit there as well, but again, certainly not overpowering.
Yeah, Matt, I agree that spice, the rye spice, the 36 and 21%. I mean, that comes through. You get that on the palate. There's no question about it. And it's funny you're talking about that honey finish, because I sat here and probably 2 minutes after I took the last sip, I started detecting just a little bit of a honey aroma. And it could be in my brain just thinking that, but it felt like this very subtle aroma of honey just lingering on my palate, which was really nice. And again, not overpowering at all. And Neil, going back to what you'd said about assumptions, because before we started the show and we were talking about, I was like, oh, we'll have round 3 and it'll be kind of like dessert. And Ari's like, no, it's not you're going to be surprised. So see, there I went again, but
it's human nature. It's human nature. But here it is with human nature. You just got to recognize it. That's all. Before you judge someone or something, you just got to recognize the fact that, wait a minute, get to know that person, or get to know, before you assume, before you judge. So,
yeah. So Ari, doing this with toasted barrels and with honey, I mean, can you talk about the process that goes into that? Because it sounds pretty complex. It's not just, taking a barrel of rye and blending it. I mean, you're taking barrels of, you're toasting them at a certain level. You're taking barrels that have had honey in it, and then you're putting all that together. So it sounds like a pretty complex procedure. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, imagine a large stainless or several large stainless blending vats with a bunch of barrels, various types of barrels next to it. And it's an iterative process of coming up with what we call micro blends, which are just very small blends where we're prototyping kind of the ideas, modulating how bright do we want it to be, how robust, what do we want the low end to look like, what do we want the mid-range to look like, right? How much treble is going to be here. And it goes through quite a few, what we call those micro blends, and then it gets scaled up to what we call the meso blend, sort of a medium-sized blend. And then we start taking the medium-sized blend, which is the bourbons and the corn whiskey, and starting to finish components in different barrels. the honey barrels and the toasted barrels, and then bring that back together and see how they go. It's hard to do a project like this if you have a definitive timeline, because you can try to hurry up. But ultimately the barrels are in control and the whiskey's in control. And so a project like this, kind of, you say it's going to be ready when it's going to be ready, and you have to move the whiskey back and forth between a big vat and smaller barrels. And it's not unlike how spirits in other parts of the world, or even wines in other parts of the world, are made, where you can take the sum of the harvest and finish some of it in some kind of oak, right? And then add it back in to modulate what that vintage will be like. So again, we're borrowing winemaking techniques, but applying it to sort of a modern whiskey environment.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So your barrels, are you keeping them up there in Michigan, or are they are? Okay. That's what I was wondering.
They're in our barrel warehouse in Michigan.
Okay. I couldn't remember. So I wanted to clarify that. So that's good to know. So Matt, final thoughts on this one before we move on to our final pour of the night.
It's good. I think it definitely challenges what the label says on it, where I think a lot of people would see honey and toasted and just immediately have the assumptions they're going to get golden grams. It's going to be wicked sweet, and it'll be absolutely delicious. But this challenges that. I really enjoy it. The addition of the corn whiskey adds a whole nother level to it, a whole different characteristic and flavor, and it very much drinks like the blend, with the addition of the finishing on it, rather than the other way around, where it would like drink more like the finished product than the blend. And I like that. It's complex, and it's done really well, as everything we've had tonight.
Yep. Again, can't say it better than what Matt says. So I'm just going to nod my head in agreement. So let's move on to, now this, I can call this the dessert round. So this is kind of the bonus pour. So Ari, do you want to tell everybody what we have poured up for our final drink of the evening?
Oh, we're happy about this. We have our new 3 Chord Bourbon Cream, clocking in at 33 proof, 16.5% alcohol by volume. And this is a very new addition to the 3 Chord whiskey family that we're elated about. We talked about having a bourbon cream for a while, and we finally, after an exhaustive prototyping process, arrived at this, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I will tell you, I think I lied earlier when I said, I got these bottles in and I had not cracked them or had any of it. I was off work today for the holiday, Martin Luther King Day. And I was sitting here at my desk preparing for the podcast. I had a nice big Americano that I had made for myself. And I thought, you know what would taste great in my Americano? A nice big pour of some bourbon cream. So I enjoyed some bourbon cream. I didn't try it neat. So I'm getting ready to do that with you guys. But I did enjoy it in an Americano this morning, and it made my morning much better.
I bet it did.
It was delicious. Matt, what do you pick up on this one in terms of the nose?
It's not what I was expecting on the nose. I was
assumptions.
Exactly. I think you're right. When oftentimes, at least when I hear bourbon cream, I think of kind of a certain Irish brand that a lot of people are familiar with, and this is certainly not that. It's good. It's got some really, really great characteristics on the nose. There's certainly the sweetness. There's a creaminess to it, but the whiskey is really shining out through this. There's like a nice roasty, malty nuttiness underneath all of it. And it's probably way off, but there's almost like some notes of cherry a little bit on the nose for me too, which might be a little weird, but I'm picking up something that way.
It just reminds me like of a nice, delicious melted milkshake in my glass as I smell it. I mean, that's all I could think about. It just smells like it's saying, just drink me because I'm melted and I just need you to finish me off. So Ari, what are we missing? What else is on the nose on this one?
You know what? It drinks like a great sweet cream that with whiskey in it. If you've ever, so I love White Russians. White Russians are one of my favorite go-to drinks. What I find is instead of using cream and coffee liqueur, you can use espresso and bourbon cream. It gives you the same sugar content, but it comes from the cream as opposed to from the coffee. And if you're like me, you also like your White Russians, not with vodka, but with whiskey.
Nice.
So I have been really enjoying espresso, 3 Chord bourbon cream, and actually the Tennessee whiskey has been one of my go-to cocktails recently. And it's sort of a whiskey version of a White Russian, but with this bourbon cream as the centerpiece.
So I'm just curious, Neil, are you the bourbon cream or the whiskey cream fan, or Ari? Was it somebody on the team that said we have got to do this? I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's interesting because I don't drink coffee.
Okay.
I'll enjoy an espresso every once in a while. I love that, but I'm not a coffee drinker. Never drink it in the morning. Drank tea my whole life. I think I only drank 1 cup of coffee once because I thought you should when I was like 13. I went, yeah, this ain't me. So even though I don't drink coffee, I was a big part of having a bourbon cream because I see people all the time, and how many people come in the bars, and one person of the partnership there, they go, I'll have like a whiskey or I'll have a vodka. And the other person says, would you have something that's different? And then they say, what about a cream or bourbon cream? And then they go, yeah, I'll have that. Can I have it iced? So I would always recognize it. And I know how much people love coffee and they love the cream. And truthfully, I did try a lot of those couple of those brands which have the Irish name. And like you're saying, Matt, earlier there, just a few minutes ago. And I never liked that. I didn't like that at all. And in our initial thing, once again, Ari and I, we say, let's try to come up with something that isn't like just like sugared, melted ice cream that you pour over, you take a bottle and pour it over the top of it, and that's it. How about something with some complexion? Have it so we can put it on ice and have ice cream all summer long. Oh, sounds like a little ad, doesn't it?
Yeah, no kidding. There's your marketing logo right there. I love it.
That's right.
It's right there. All summer long, enjoy ice cream. So, but it has to have that whiskey. There you go. That whiskey base. It has to be there. It just can't be. Just it's self-explanatory. Yeah. So,
well, Matt, let's talk about the palate, because I don't want to hold these guys up much longer. What do you think in terms of the taste on this one?
I think it tastes excellent. It's really reminiscent to me of like a chocolate covered malt ball, like a Whopper type candy. It's got definitely the cocoa or the chocolate comes across, nice maltiness, roastiness in the flavor as well. Good sweetness, a creaminess. It tastes very much like that for me. A huge hit. It's blended really well, whereas some of the other products we may have been alluding to earlier, Neil, are less homogeneous. They just don't come together. This is a really great harmony in glass.
Yeah,
we had two different expressions. I remember when we were going through our taste test, and they were both tilting to, even though they were subtle, they were both had an extremity to it. They were both kind of extreme in the directions they came, and it was kind of unanimous, I think. Ari, over the top. I mean, not that the other one was bad. It wasn't. It was very good, but we always tilted to this one. This particular.
Yeah, I can see why. I've had probably 4 or 5 different bourbon creams or Irish creams. And I would say that this is probably the best that I've had, guys. There's just a nice combination between the cream. The whiskey comes through. It's not overpowering, but it's also, I think I've had some before that felt kind of thin. Something about it just it maybe watered down. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't taste right, or almost like artificial maybe. And this one, nowhere near that. I mean, this is very, very creamy, like, I don't want to say the melted milkshake, but again, I mean, that's what it's reminiscent of. Matt nailed it when he talked about the malted ball, like a Whopper or something like that. Just delicious, guys. So
I should do really quickly that we got a press release. Someone sent us an email saying that this bourbon cream had won some award. It was maybe the best liqueur and the John Barleycorn Award. And as I'm scanning down that page, who do I see on that page who also won an award for podcasting? It was you two. So congratulations on that.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we picked up a double gold on that one, guys. Nice. So it's because because we have great partners, you know, and that's what helps us do a great show. Well, I don't want to say great show, but it helps us do the show that we do, and we're very appreciative of the support, obviously, and thankful for what we get the chance to do and contribute in some small way to this industry, because we both really enjoy doing what we do. So, guys, let's talk about real quick the future before we wrap it up. What's it look like for Three Chord? What do you got? Things in the works, plans you want to share? You know, breaking news, anything you want to throw out there at us?
There's always something breaking, always. But I think, you know, congratulations, by the way. You two guys are phenomenal. You really are. You have so much fun at it, and you certainly, it's, you know, so much about the brand, so much about the whiskey and everything. It's tremendous. I love hearing how you guys talk about what you pick up from. I mean, I find that, you know, intriguing to me, because, like I said, I can hear really good, but I can't see. So, you know, I don't have the palate like Ari has. Ari talks about all the time when he goes to make these masterpieces, you know, he can't eat garlic for a couple of days. He can't be smoking a cigar. I mean, this is like, that's an instrument in itself. His palate is a huge instrument. And you guys, with the expression and the way you express yourself and try your different practices, you guys have that too. So, you know, it's tremendous. Keep doing what you're doing. We love that. And thanks for having us on the show. So as far as going to what we have coming, you know, it's kind of a guess. If you go to threechordbourbon.com, it's important, though, because you can read about our music ambassadorship program. We have many bands all over the country now that are supporting us. We're working together with them. We don't have the time to go into telling you all the names of these artists that we're behind on this, but we have a huge program. A lot of philanthropy that we've started since the very beginning is expanding. You know, we continue to do Blue Society, Sweet Relief. I have another foundation coming out called At One or Atone. That's going to be a wellness type foundation. So, you know, we're trying to reach out, build a community of musicians and people, and just a team of people that like whiskey, love the lifestyle of being nice and kind to one another, and sipping whiskey, having conversation, and keeping exploring and being disruptive. And Ari's never going to stop, and I'm not going to stop either. And who knows what we're going to be making next, you know? Just going to keep going.
Well, that sounds... Yeah, that sounds great. I'm holding out for that grappa. I'm just telling you, Neil, because I know it's dear to your heart. So I'm sure once it comes out, once you figure it out, it's going to be incredible.
Like I said, I guarantee you one thing: when you put that up to your nose, it will not smell like, I'd say 75% of the grappas that are out there. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned threechordbourbon.com, your website. People can also find you guys on social media as well, Instagram and all those places. So if they want more information, that's a great resource for them to find you guys. And before we wrap it up, though, you guys, final thoughts from Ari? You got anything you want to add before we close it out here?
Well, it's just the future is really bright, and we're so happy to be talking to you. As Neil alluded to, we're going to be working with several musicians and bands going forward. So watch this space. If you're into the intersection of music and whiskey, make sure you're following Three Chord. If you want to know where to find these products, there's an up-to-date store tracker on our website, something like 4,000 different retail locations across the country. So anything you want to learn about Three Chord, just go ahead to threechordbourbon.com. That's the good resource for you.
I want to add one more thing, and then we'll close out with this, is that we have quite a few seasonal releases. This is important. Now, this ain't a sales pitch, but if you find something you really like, you better buy it, because it's not going to stay on the shelves for long, because we're going to introduce something else. And if you like that one, you're going to have to get that one. It's a seasonal release. Yeah. It's important.
That's great. Great advice there, Neil. Matt, before we close it out here, anything you want to add?
Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to sit down with us this evening or this morning or whenever it is for our guests listening out there. So we're really appreciative of you all taking the time and walking us through what you all have been up to and what you're doing in the future. I know everything looks really bright, and let's not wait another 36 years to do this again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, guys. We really, really appreciate you guys hanging out with us, taking the time to spend time and tell us about what you've been up to. Like Matt said, it's been a great show. We really enjoy it. Always have a great time hanging out with you guys. Ari, it's always great just to run into you different places, man. Just one of the guys in the industry that I really just enjoy getting to spend time with. and just talking, picking your brain sometimes, and just enjoying some good conversation, man. So it's always great to see you, Neil. Great to have you back on the show. I'm sorry that we waited 142 episodes to do it. I promise that won't happen for the next one. So we'll make it much sooner than 36 years. So,
well, thank you. You aged well, by the way, a lot better than I did. I can tell you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you guys for the kind words too about the show and the award. We really, really appreciate that. And for all of our listeners, we appreciate you guys as well. We appreciate our sponsors, everything that they do for us. We appreciate you, our listeners, everything that you guys do for us as well. If you have any suggestions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. You can join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We would love to have you in that community with us. You can also send us an email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you there if you have any ideas or questions. And with that said, I want to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.